and it's just, oh man, gonna work its way up. This is awesome. Stick it in full power. Look at that. Oh my gosh, it's kind of like nothing for this, isn't it? Just amazing suspension travel. That was actually very impressive from a drivetrain standpoint. This video is brought to you by Iona, North America's premier charging network. With unmatched commitment to elevating the customer experience, Iona is opening America's roads to all EVs, giving drivers the coverage they need, the reliability they deserve, and the amenities they crave. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You join me on the hill atop of the track, which is always my favorite view here at our new home in North Carolina. In this video, you and I will be driving our brand new Rivian R1S together. Now, you and I just took delivery of this in Normal, Illinois at the factory. We did a factory pickup delivery of our cheap base model. I shouldn't say cheap, it was still almost 80 grand, but the cheapest Rivian R1S that you can spec. And I think a lot of people were expecting me to get a quad motor, the new quad, and while I still might do that in the future, I think you and I agree that it's way more informative to way more people to actually review the standard one. The Rivian options list can go so crazy so fast. And with this model right here being a zero option vehicle, it really helps evaluate kind of the baseline offering of the Rivian R1 line. And that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to take our new R1S dual standard on the road, drive it like a consumer. We'll then rip it around the track a little bit. We'll then take it off-roading. If you look behind you over here, we have stair steps. We have a nice little off-road course that we'll take it on, because I think Rivian, they want you to buy the expensive ones. They're saying the quad motor, that's the fastest one, that's the best handling, that's the best off-road. Well, I think for most people, like I've been saying, this is all you need. And in this video, we're gonna find out if the dual standard is really all you need for driving enthusiasm. So join me as we drive our new R1S on road, on track, and off-road for the first time. I'd like to say a huge thank you to the CCAN Action Fund for sponsoring this video. Guys, I've been telling you about it for weeks, and we are nearing the end of one of the best EV raffles of the year. So many out-of-spec viewers have actually won cars through this program, and that's why I love working with them. Not only are you entering for a chance to win the raffle by purchasing a ticket, but you're also supporting CCAN Action Fund's clean energy programs, which are absolutely fantastic. Just to remind you, the first place prize this year is a choice between a Rivian R1S or R1T, a Lucid Gravity or Lucid Air, a Porsche Taycan or Macan. Awesome electric vehicles. That same ticket will grant you a second place opportunity, which would be a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or a Volkswagen ID Buzz. And for the first time ever in one of these giveaways, there is a third place opportunity, which you would be able to win a Chevy Equinox EV. Still a great electric car. Truly, the chances have never been better. All you need to do is head to evraffle.org, which will be linked in the description below, and enter for your chance to win. A huge thanks to the CCAN Action Fund for sponsoring this video, and an even warmer congratulations to the future winner of this program. Looking forward to seeing who it ends up being. Maybe it'll be you. Before we get into evaluating this car, let me tell you how it stacks up in the Rivian lineup. Now, we currently own 3 Rivians here at Out of Spec. I have my Generation 1 R1T quad motor that uses the original Bosch motors, 835 horsepower plus or minus. I think that's what it is. Insanely high performance vehicle, absolutely awesome. Love that truck. This, the new standard R1S, costs the same money, the base model, as my old top model Rivian. So the pricing has just gone crazy over at Rivian. They're a company, they're trying to stay alive. They're building some of my favorite vehicles on the road. But again, as I've been telling you, I don't think you need to go crazy on the options. This one, being the standard model for $76,990, is 533 horsepower and 610 pound-feet of torque. It wasn't long ago that like the Cayenne Turbo with 500 horsepower was the crazy super SUV of our time. And now that's the standard cheapest Rivian that you can buy. Again, I think a lot of people are so focused on the 0 to 60 times that maybe that's what you can do on the street. I don't know. I just think this has plenty of power, and we're going to find that out today in a real open, safe environment to exploit the performance. Now, we also own Scott's Rivian, which is a dual motor performance. Hers has the power upgrade. That's in the, what, 600 something horsepower, 700 something horsepower? I don't know, still crazy fast. Then you can go up for the 850 horsepower tri-motor option, which is, yes, incredibly fast, but introduces a complexity that I don't love the way Rivian currently implements, which are individual motors on each axle. And now Rivian has just started offering the new quad motor, the 1025 horsepower 4-motor setup that is, the top dog. And you wouldn't really know looking at it that this isn't the top dog Rivian, other than if you're in the know, you can't get these wheels on the quad motor, and the brake calipers are silver instead of blue. And it's missing some other blue accents. That's it. So for YouTube thumbnail stuff, this looks the same as a quad motor Rivian, which I just find really funny. And I kind of like it. I like this, that the Rivian quad motor is a sleeper, but I also love that this kind of looks the same as the top one. It's just funny to me. I guess it sounds like Rivian's going to make the next gen quad motor a bit more stylistically different, which I think it does, in all fairness, deserve to be a little bit beefed up than the standard models from a design perspective. Let's get into what this vehicle is. Dual standard. This is an LFP battery pack, around 100 kilowatt hours, just under 100 kilowatt hours usable. I'm going to be doing all the range tests, charging tests, 10% challenge, running it to 0. And one thing that I'm really curious about on the LFP battery is actually battery calibration. This is not the first LFP vehicle that I've owned, but a lot of the LFP stuff that I have is like old school and not really new enough to matter. What I'm going to do with this is, after we're done with our testing, I'm going to drive it for like a month or 2 months without ever letting it calibrate at 100%, which LFP kind of needs to do. I want to know if this Rivian will throw fault codes. I want to know if it's going to run out of charge early. I want to know if it's going to go 50 miles past 0, or if nothing will happen at all. So all of those videos will be over on out of spec testing, so make sure you stay tuned to those. What we have here are two basically identical enduro drive units with a slightly different gear ratio, if I remember correctly. They're permanent magnet drive units with a clutch disconnect on the rear axle, which is the wrong axle to disconnect. And the disconnect is horrible. I think it may have gotten worse than in the past, but both Scott's Rivian and this Rivian have a dynamic clutch disconnect in the key up setting. That means when you're cruising under normal load, this is freewheeling back here. The motor's not connected. You're driving front wheel drive most of the time. And even in Scott's Rivian, which has 6,500 miles on it right now, significantly worse front tire wear than rear tire wear. We're going to have her rotate her tires as soon as possible. It's a terrible drivetrain decision, but they did this to eke out the EPA range. And when you're cruising at highway speed and you roll into the throttle, or even if you're using the driver assistance system and it decides, let's go for a pass of a car, you get this huge thunk coming from the rear. I've been complaining about it forever, so I won't harp on it too much in this video, but it just makes it so awful to drive this vehicle at highway speeds in standard key up setting. So what I've had to do is drive it in snow mode, which elongates the accelerator pedal a little bit, but also when you go wide open throttle, gives you full power, seemingly. We can run some numbers and test it on the testing channel. And then you're actually pretty good. Then it's all-wheel drive all the time. Same if you're in towing mode. This vehicle does not offer a sport mode because it does not have any performance upgrades. I'll walk you through the drive modes in the vehicle, of which there are only 3 drive modes in this Rivian, which is all software controlled. Scott's Rivian, again, has the same exact drivetrain, but with way more flexibility in terms of rally mode and sand mode and drift mode and sport mode and blah, blah, blah. This is software sort of choked with just a handful of options, the ones that you kind of really need. And I'm okay with it. I mean, we're going to try it out. We'll try all-terrain mode out up here, see how it does cross-car torque vectoring. I'll explain all that in this video as well. So the nice thing about the standard Rivians is you still get the incredible suspension system that is on all of the other models. So you get a basically mechanically unlinked, from a stabilizer perspective, front and rear suspension system. Each are controlled with a individually adjustable hydraulic situation that can control compression and rebound, basically from full soft to full stiff. So you can mimic a sway bar disconnect, get a tunnel wheel droop. You can basically firm this thing all the way up to be 100% stiff to allow no body roll. And I'm really curious how they've tuned it here in the base model. My guess is the same as the other models. Quad motor did have some more tuning from a steering perspective and maybe also suspension, but not brakes. So this has the same brakes as the 1,025 horsepower quad motor, and it's again going to be fine for most people who drive it to the grocery store, but that's not the point. If you buy the fast one, do fast stuff with it. Okay, enough complaining and enough explaining. Let's just go in and go drive. It's hot and there's bugs everywhere. Well guys, you joined me in our new Rivian, and man, does it feel nice. First of all, I just want to commend Rivian on building this one way better than Scott's Rivian R1T. I'm totally convinced her car still has a suspension issue after driving this new one, because this new one feels tight and like a Gen 2 R1S should. Scott's dual motor max pack with the performance upgrade that we got 3 months ago now, that one feels weird from a suspension setup. So this is definitely how they should drive, and it drives pretty dang well. First, what I'm going to do is put us into all-purpose mode. Now, I've shown you so many times driving Rivians with their cool drivetrain stuff, but you'll be able to watch here as we drive around. The front motors pull us along, and you can see we're just in front wheel drive mode, which to me, at low speed, there's no real drivability issue other than just a lot of tire wear, and you're asking a lot of those front wheels and tires. It's also just inherently not a total premium experience to feel like you're being pulled along rather than pushed along. And what I would have preferred Rivian to do would have been to disconnect the front axle instead of the rear axle. Now, their argument probably would have been, hey, I can still go into big regen without having to reconnect the front axle, because the front axle is where you can put most of your regen power, because the weight comes on the front when you're decelerating. Therefore, it's more efficient. And the whole reason that Rivian chose to do this dynamic disconnect in all-purpose mode is to game the EPA systems. Now, is it to game it? Is it to just get a better result? It's hard to say, but I would argue that that is the wrong decision. That's a decision to put a range number on the screen for a customer that doesn't actually translate to a good ownership experience in the real world. Because currently what you have to do is actually put the R1 into snow mode, and now you can see we have both motors outputting power and regen, splitting the load, taking so much force off the front tires, and making it drive so much nicer, in my opinion. Snow mode also retains, and maybe it didn't used to, but it also retains driver assistance and everything normally. You just have to remember at the beginning of a long drive cycle, or I should say after a long sleep cycle, to put it into snow mode. It will remember when you get in and out of the car after, throughout the day, but if it sleeps overnight, it resets to all-purpose mode, which it has to in order to comply with the EPA range regulations. The other downside to all-purpose, rather than just running front-wheel drive, is the thunk you get from the rear drive unit. So I'm going to let it spin down to 0. It's probably there. I'm going to roll into the throttle, and you may notice a big kadunk. And it's actually not too bad in that scenario. The real terrible scenarios are when you're cruising at high speed. I'll show you on the straightaway, because the motor's got a rev match way deeper into the battery, or way up in the RPM, and therefore it takes longer to connect, and sometimes the clutches close before the motors actually reach the same input and output speed on the shaft, and it closes the clutches too early, and you get a gunk gunk gunk. And it just shakes the whole car, and it feels like you've been rear-ended almost. It's a terrible situation, especially when compared to other automakers who do this. Mercedes does an amazing job with their clutch connects. Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, they do a pretty good job. Mercedes is really the best, but this is clearly the worst clutch disconnect and reconnect strategy. It's actually even better on the Gen 2s than it is on the Gen 1, because it had an updated inverter, is my understanding, to handle the speed matching a little bit better. No, this is a real problem. The thing is, this is a problem on all dual motor Rivians. So Scott's dual motor performance, which was $30,000 more than this car, her car's $105,000 sticker, has the same exact problem. So I'm going to get us up to speed. Rear motor dynamically engaged there pretty nicely. At low speed, let's get it up to, I don't know, we'll juice it up to 75 miles an hour, something like that. We'll go back to light cruising, let the rear motor spin down. There it goes. I can actually feel it disconnect there. We'll let it hit 0, and here at the last minute I'll hit the throttle just so I can show you. Boom! Kunk! I can hear the inverter zoom, try and spin the motor up, can't quite get there, and poof! You just get a small hit from the rear. not a good feeling, not a premium tuning experience, and definitely something that needs to be improved. Now, Rivian has said in an upcoming software update, there will actually be an additional drive mode that comes to this vehicle called Conserve. And in Conserve mode, it will actually do this dynamic clutching, but in all-purpose mode, it will stay all-wheel drive all the time. This is how the tri-motor and their quad-motor vehicles work. However, you're still going to have to select in the next software update all-purpose every time after a deep sleep because, of course, for the EPA range requirements, those have to be tested in key-up settings. So there's enough about the clutch disconnect reconnect. In terms of driving this Rivian, well, it drives honestly identical to every other R1S that I've driven. And that's a great thing because the Gen 2 R1S, when it's tuned properly, unlike our black R1S, I gotta bring that thing back into service and have them fix it, is a wonderful, smooth, great steering, fun to drive vehicle. In fact, on a back road, you can have a lot of fun in a R1S. And even just if I come here slightly in all-purpose mode and just kind of drive it through a couple of these cones, very low speed, you can see almost no body roll. I have ride feel set to soft, and it's just gets into this agility mode like that. And that is all a benefit of these hydraulic roll stabilization bars that are instantly adjustable. So for example, I can come in here and boom, hard left, hard right, and we can go through. Now, what you just felt there was a ton of electronic stability control kicking in and shutting down the fun. We can back that off, which we will up in next couple laps just for fun. But in general, just being able to cruise in this and gently throw it into a corner, you get a positive steering feel, you get a positive point of rotation. The center point of rotation is so far forwards in the R1S, it kind of almost feels like it's a little drift car. It's honestly very fun the faster you drive it. The R1T is like a 12 or 14 inch longer wheelbase and is slowed down so much more from a performance standpoint. The R1T's benefit is on a back road where there's bumps, which there's no bumps out here on track. When you drive it where there's bumps, man, can it handle the bumps so much better. Just as a point of reference, I'll drive off track here and just hit some dirt. You'll notice it's very smooth absorbing all of these bumps out here on the grass. But when you hit bigger bumps, you're going to feel the rear end porpoise quite a bit, even in the Gen 2 R1S. I mean, it's nowhere near as smooth and flat as the R1T would be. And that's one of the problems, I would say, overall with the R1S over R1T. I just wish they would make an R1S L, an extended wheelbase, and not just the R1S short wheelbase. I really don't see any need for it other than the off-road and maybe some of the agility stuff. Okay, that's enough just like normal daily driving stuff. We all know Rivians drive great. They have great one-pedal driving. 2 points just on the low-speed driving, and then we'll get into the fun stuff. There is no high regen in the standard R1S. It is standard regen only, which is fine. It's still pretty strong, but I don't know why they wouldn't give this high regen other than they're concerned about putting the battery under so much recharging stress. Because it's LFP, there's limited conditions in where it can accept full regen power, and maybe they just didn't want to always have a regen limit. That's the only thing I can think as to why they wouldn't want high regen in this vehicle. You would actually get even a little bit more range out of it. The second, and I would say the most annoying thing about the LFP R1Ss is there's no way to turn off brake blending in regen. So in every other Rivian that I've driven, including our other dual motors, I can turn off a setting that essentially applies friction brakes when you're regen limited on the vehicle. And what that means is you'll always have a very consistent one-pedal drive feeling in this Rivian, but when you lift off, you can actually feel the brake pedal go in and blend in friction brakes, especially between 95 and 100% state of charge. Now, that's my guess as to why they don't have that setting in this vehicle, because Rivian suggests full charging the LFP models every single time. And I'll make a whole video on why I don't actually think that's smart, but I do think you should full charge it every week or two to maintain battery calibration for BMS. And so they do require a ton of full charges. For most people, you just charge it to 100, don't worry about it. But for storage, you still want to keep it down low. And of course, when you are at 100%, you can't regen the battery. Also, when the battery is cold, LFP is way more sensitive to accepting recuperation or incoming power, charging either through a charging port, AC or DC charging, or regen, and therefore it's actually limited and you would have very little regen in the wintertime. So my guess for customer satisfaction is they took out that setting. So in the R1S LFP or R1T LFP, whenever it's the battery's at a limited state where it can't accept regen, it blends friction brakes to give you a constant one pedal driving feel. And my preference is always just to take as much regen as the car will give me and kind of drive around that limitation. That means maybe lifting off a bit early to get up to a stoplight so I can recuperate as much energy as possible. But most drivers probably just want their car to feel the same every time, and that setting they can leave on in every other Rivian, but here you can't turn it off. So that's just odd that that's there. A couple other differences is no sport mode and no off-road modes. You just have 3 main drive modes: all-purpose, snow, and all-terrain. So let's drive it in all-purpose. I'm going to keep the stability backed off to reduce. When you do that, there was a clunk. It keeps it in all-wheel drive mode all the time. And we're just going to drive it a little bit more fun in this standard all-purpose mode here on track. Now, I'm not going to go through and shred the tires hardcore. I can feel it blending in regen with the friction brake there, because I went for the brake pedal and it was already in pretty far, which was a little bit annoying. Just picking up the pace nicely, and wow, it feels good. Go to wide open throttle. Dude, this thing is quick. Okay, you know what we have to do? We have to do a launch. I need to see the acceleration of the standard Rivian. 4.5 seconds 0 to 60 is what it's rated for. Again, 530 horsepower, 600 plus pound-feet of torque. First thing I'm going to do is drop the suspension height to low. We all know, if you're a viewer of Out of Spec, that Rivians adjust their power output by suspension height. So in order to get the best launch in any Rivian, you need to be in lowest suspension. Because this is a standard model without sport mode, there's actually no lowest setting. It is just the low setting. So 1 up from as low as it can go. That's the one suspension height through software that's coded out of this vehicle. But to launch it, I'm going to do what I always do. Stability's in reduced, left foot hard on the brake, all-purpose mode. It's going to launch in all-wheel drive. We're going to floor it with the right pedal. 3, 2, 1, lift off. Soft launch, but then it boogies. So 38 miles an hour gives you everything. There's 60, there's 70, there's 80, there's 90. You don't need any more acceleration. I mean, you put anyone in this thing and they're going to be blown away. Now, certainly under full launching conditions, that is where the benefit of the dual motor performance, the tri-motor, and a little bit on the quad motor really come into play. Again, the reason I say the difference between tri and quad isn't that huge is because the tri and quad motor have the same power on the rear axle, which is where all the weight goes on a launch. The quad motor adds power to the front axle, but in the tri-motor under a launch, you're actually already spinning tires. So most people, when they say the quad motor feels faster than the tri-motor under acceleration, it's because Rivian equips the quad motor with a stickier tire. But if you ran tire for tire, like on an all-terrain or a general sporty all-season tire like that you can get on the tri-motor, the acceleration would be almost the same. This feels really good from an acceleration standpoint, and really quick actually. So now we're going to bump the ride feel up to firm. We may as well, because we're out on track. Typically I always just drive them in standard ride feel. We've got suspension height set to low. I'm going to back stability control all the way off, and this is as sporty as we can get this thing to go. Again, no sport mode. Snow mode would probably prioritize a bit more 50-50 power split. This should, all-purpose is doing kind of the same thing. You can watch it on the screen as we drive, but this should prioritize a bit more rear motor than front when possible. However, sport mode really does that, which this is not equipped with. And I'm curious to see like kind of our first hard driving lap in the R1S. Let's see how it feels. I won't go super crazy with it. I'll save that for our 1-lap series, which I'm going to bring back and run this flat out. But here I am coming out of this corner, absolutely matted. It's fast as hell. Holy smokes. A little bit of brake feel. Pedal feels a little bit squishy, but that's okay. Back to wide open throttle. Moves along just fine. Let's just chuck it through here. Feels composed. Feels nice. Oh, ABS hitting hard there. Little tire squeal. Very neutral power coming out of that corner. It does not love to drift on power there, at least was my impression. So weird to have cones all over the track. Coming down the straightaway, 100 plus miles an hour, 110. We've hit our top speed. of 112. Now again, I'm not suited up, I don't have a helmet, we're not going to go super hardcore through here. I will save the super hot laps for when I'm all kitted out with my safety gear, but just even here, feeling so nice. Hard throttle out of that corner, very neutral performance. The brake pedal is like the least inspiring thing about all of this. You can see it goes, front tires will understeer first, but if I chuck it and floor it, no, it just stays super neutral. So it's going to require a little bit more fun to get it to slide, I think, which we can certainly do off throttle. Let's get it in. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, smoke show back there. And it just kind of ran out of power to continue the slide. What more do you need than this? I mean, honestly, the sport mode would make a big difference in drivetrain split. But as an inaugural slide with this thing, whoa, this is amazing. I mean, you put this up against a 10-year-old Cayenne Turbo, maybe 15-year-old, whatever the E1 Cayenne when that came out. I guess, is it 20 years now? Oh my goodness, like an 05 Cayenne Turbo, which was the super SUV. This would smoke it. I almost want to do that video, because look at the power. It just picks up speed, and then in terms of balance, you know, I'm right on that edge, just getting it to move around. And these all-season tires, they're technically all-terrains, Goodyear Wrangler Territory ATs, super grippy, surprisingly. Stick it in full power. Look at that. This is the base one, and it's so dynamic. That's really, honestly incredible. I am blown away. Certainly when you spec up to especially dual motor performance, that's where you get the most benefit. Above that, I've already done dual motor performance versus tri versus quad. I'll leave that video linked below. But I didn't notice a huge benefit to going with the tri motor or quad motor. The rear motors individually have a pretty hard time with torque vectoring from the software. This is a few months ago now, so maybe it's been dialed in. I've got to get a new quad motor out here to play around with. But it just felt totally unnatural. Whereas here, where you have one mechanical open differential, but you can use brake-based torque vectoring, it just feels like Rivian's done a better job tuning this system. And no question, even here in all-purpose with the suspension low and stability off, it's a very dynamic, very fun vehicle. I think if you're going to drive it like that, I don't think it's $30,000 better to get Scott's dual motor performance, because again, battery temperatures, brake temperatures, they're just not built to be driven that hard, is my feeling. I think this is more than acceptable. And if you find yourself on a back road or, you know, any sort of typical dynamic driving scenario, this is going to be more than fun. So shout out to the Rivian team for actually making the standard Rivian feel absolutely amazing and give power. I mean, this is quick. Even if I just launch it without brake boosting it, just floor it, just spins the tires off a launch. Whoa, it just laid rubber for a while. And again, no torque steer, nothing crazy. It just went straight and it just spun. And that's pretty damn impressive. Very impressive from a performance standpoint. All right, let's go off-road now and see if you really need to spend the big money for the off-road stuff, or if the standard one can do everything it needs to do. So now as we make our way over to the off-road course, we can talk a little bit about options and settings and drive modes in this thing that we have for off-roading. First thing we've got is we've got a few settings we can choose from. The first is all-purpose, snow, or all-terrain. I'm going to select the all-terrain setting to go off-road into high mode. Not that we need it for this ditch in particular, but here we go. One thing I will mention is just Rivians in general. Oh my goodness. Is Alyssa even going to make it through this in the Spark, or is she going to get stuck? The Spark made it up! Nice. Nice job getting the Spark through there. When you're driving and you adjust the suspension in a Rivian, it takes a long time for it to reach the desired ride height. So typically what I recommend is to when you select height, just creep forwards at like 2 miles an hour so that it's not binding on the suspension, but you're also not inducing a lot of load into the suspension from bumps. It can get where it wants to get, and then you can use it. It's not a very fast changing suspension, and it can run out of air in the reserve tank very quickly. So the first thing we're going to do is take it up more of a elephant step boulder situation through here. Now, the couple things that we're missing compared to the other vehicles would be rock crawl mode, rally mode, and maybe soft sand mode would be another one that would be relevant here. General all-terrain settings should be pretty good though. Now, some of these ruts are pretty crazy, so I'm going to raise us all the way up into the highest ride height. I'm also going to keep ride feel in soft, but if I was coming over boulders, I would actually keep ride feel in firm so that when I came up and over something, I wouldn't smash the battery tray into an obstacle. Now, something to keep in mind is that I'm actually, this vehicle is not equipped with the underbody protection in it, which means, you know, there's just less protection for the battery. I still think there's nothing to worry about there. My R1T actually does not have the underbody protection, and I have smashed it on so many rocks, and it's been fine. It hasn't caught on fire. It hasn't exploded. So I think we're pretty good there. So I'm going to keep stability control on. We've just reached highest ride height. That's how long it takes to get there sometimes. And we're going to walk our way up this hill. And maybe before we do that, let me just show you outside so we can discuss the wheel and tire package that we're on and kind of how it is fit for this purpose. Another cautionary moment for Rivian is when you hit the park button, it only clamps the parking brake on the rear wheels, which means the front wheels, because there's, you know, no transmission or anything, there's no park lock, mechanical park lock. If you're on a really steep downhill, just be extra mindful, especially in slippery mud or snow or whatever, that it's only the rear wheels that have the parking brake on, and it can roll away pretty easily, actually. So that's something to keep in mind. That's about all we'll do for drive modes. I didn't realize it, but I love that this vehicle still retains highest ride height. Most of the time you don't need highest mode. It's just these are actually pretty crazy ruts, and I'm going to take a pretty stupidly weird line through it just to test some of its capability and performance. And let's see how well it does. And we'll talk about how the car is going to do that versus other Rivians in the next clip. So after driving this in a normal civilized manner, complaining about clutch disconnects, and then doing some more spirited driving, I think it's pretty clear that in terms of performance delta, yes, you do get more with the performance upgrade package. It's more about that software that allows a lot more power on the rear axle than the front. This is a very neutrally balanced vehicle tuned through software, but you can overwhelm it with some momentum and some vehicle huge inputs from steering, and you can slide it. And it's like, okay, that's amazing. For the amount of times that you're actually going to do that, I still am pretty sure most owners won't do that with their dual motor performance tri or quad motor options. Therefore, I think probably not worth spending any extra money for things like that. This is not me trying to convince you not to spend money. This is me trying to convince you just be mindful when you spec up a Rivian that the base one is this good. One thing I will say that might be an extra deterrent to you doing this with your own Rivian at home is one slide. I mean, a couple slides. That's the edges of the sidewall right there, already showing some wear. And that's what you get when you slide, come on over to this side, when you slide a 7,000 pound vehicle around. You can take a look here, this tire just on that edge of the sidewall. It isn't bad, but certainly we're going to be doing a lot more work with this vehicle before we do some big drifts to send off this set of tires before we put another set on. But certainly at some point, this thing is going to do a full drift day out here, which will be really fun. Talking off-road now. So this is a dual motor vehicle, which means you have, you know, a permanent magnet motor on each axle. All-terrain mode will make sure they're connected at all times. And also in terms of splitting power or torque from the left to the right side of the vehicle, it uses brake-based torque vectoring. So no mechanical lockers, which I think is a huge miss on the dual motor Rivians. I've been complaining about it since day one. But what they do is you'll have to essentially wait until you get some wheel slip of wheels in the air. It will clamp down on that brake, which then makes it harder to turn the wheel with less traction, and it forces the torque to go to the wheel to get up and over an obstacle, the one that's on the ground. That's the theory of operation. The tri and quad motor vehicles operate a bit differently. Now, the tri-motor vehicle has the identical front axle to this. So from an off-road perspective, when you're trying to climb up something and the front, let's say the front right wheels in the air, it still has to do a brake-based torque vectoring to send the power to the other side. On the rear axle, it does have the benefit of individually controlled, mechanically unlinked permanent magnet motors. They use a different drive unit than the Enduro. It's called the Ascend drive unit. Ascend? I think Ascent drive unit. And, you know, it's just another in-house Rivian developed motor like this one, just a little bit more power dense. And the way that works is you still will get weird wheel spin on the rear. However, it's not like you're going to lose all torque to the wheel that's on the ground. So you still have to wait for software to say, oh, this one's spinning, let me back down, let me push harder on the other one. So rather than doing it with brakes, it's doing it with motors. However, you still retain motive force on the wheel at all times that's on the ground because that motor is still working. Where it kind of becomes a problem is in a stall torque situation, especially with the Gen 1 quad motor vehicles, where you can get yourself into a situation where 3 wheels on the Rivian have no traction, and the 4th wheel, let's say it's this one here, is the only one that can get you up and over an obstacle. Well, you can run into a stall torque issue, which is the electric motor trying to go from 0 to 1 RPM, and it can really create a thermal hotspot in the motor, and it can be really hard for that motor to get you up and over an obstacle. Where in a situation when you have one motor like this, where you can do brake-based torque vectoring, that one juicier motor may actually work better in a stall torque situation. Thankfully for the Gen 2 Rivian tri and quad motor, those rear motors and in the quad motor, the front motors are much juicier, which means you can really you can really get up and over more obstacles without worrying about stall torque. But I off-roaded the new quad motor and actually the tri-motor as well, and I just noticed a lot of wheel spin, a lot of stuff happening, and I would prefer, from an old school off-roading standpoint, mechanically locked differentials. That does not mean the capability of the tri and quad motor is diminished. It just means you'll hear wheel spin and you have to stay in the throttle more or even give it more throttle when in a traditional sense you would back off when wheels are spinning with mechanical diffs. Because if you hear one wheel spinning with a mechanical locker or even triple lockers, center diff, front and rear, it means everything is spinning. In the case of the Rivian, you're just going to have a lot of wheel spin off-road, kind of no matter the powertrain choice you go with. So that's where I think actually going with the dual motor setup isn't going to be that much of a hindrance over the tri and quad for most situations, because the brake-based torque vectoring will allow some torque multiplication to go to the wheel that actually has traction, whereas the individual motors, again, can only do what that one motor can do. And I think it's going to feel a little bit more natural to actually wait for the brake to get on the wheel that's spinning to send power cross car to the one with traction. I think that's going to feel more natural to most people. That's my prediction. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take it to a much harder obstacle, which is on the other side of this climb, drive it up some stair steps, and then we'll have some huge elephant steps up there to see how it handles wheel in the air type stuff. So let's go do it. We'll have some fun off-road. Welcome out here to one of the off-road courses at the Out of Spec track. We've got some stair steps that have recently been added and some huge obstacles when we get up there. I'm really curious to see how the R1S does. Now, typically I would air down for a day of off-roading, mostly because I'd be worried about rock pinching and some other stuff. We actually have no boulders or rocks to worry about, so we're gonna run factory pressures, which are pretty high right now because we just got the tires warm on track, so that'll be kind of interesting. And you can see this really requires a pretty good approach angle and departure angle, and of course a breakover up top. So this is about keeping the suspension high. It's about understanding throttle control and also some of the software behind this all-terrain mode to really limit the amount of input into the accelerator pedal. This can make, again, 600 plus pound-feet of torque instantly if it wanted to. So if we hit a bump by accident and you hit the throttle hard, there's a lot of hysteresis or a slowed down response in the accelerator pedal in Rivian's all-terrain mode to make sure it doesn't just shoot you off if you whack the pedal hard by accident. I think it's a really cool addition and a nice software feature for sure. What I'm going to do is just get in there, hit drive, and just walk myself up this hill And what we're also working on is building our own sort of off-road test loop around the property. So if anyone has any obstacles you'd like to see, or know how to, if you know how to build obstacles, or if you've got cool stuff that you want us to add, I'd like to make a solid off-road loop that's repeatable that we can run a bunch of vehicles on for testing. So let's do it. All right, guys, time to head up the hill. So I'm going to run all-terrain mode. I'm going to run stability in on. Ride feel in firm now, so we don't come down on a stair step. And I do have some cameras which are beautiful high res to help me out as well. But for you guys, I'm going to keep it on this all-terrain view, and we'll run just a little bit of seat cooling. I can hear the fans and stuff going on. I don't know why, because I have climate control completely off. But if they're going to be running, we may as well click climate on a low setting. And again, when you're in off-road mode, Rivian doesn't let you see motor or battery temperatures. So let's climb up this hill and see how it does coming up. So just getting us right on that first thing. A lot of stall torque that we're going to be working through here, and especially highest suspension. And it's just, oh man, going to work its way up. This is awesome. And you can see it's providing a lot of torque. Even, actually, I'm off throttle. It's providing a lot of torque on the motors. We need it to transfer torque to the front, so I'm full throttle right now. Come on, Rivian, we need more front motor. I'm still floored. Okay, we're going to come to a stop here so we don't overheat the motors. We're going to probably have to go stability control off. Again, I'm going slow up this to be gentle on the driveline or the suspension components. Obviously, you'd come flying up if you needed to. So there's reduced stability control, and that got us enough on the front axle to pull us up. And here we are working our way up. That was actually very impressive from a drivetrain standpoint. I can't see anything out the front, so I'm going to go with this camera set up so I can see more. And of course, as always, I'll have Alyssa come up and spot me a little bit more as we make our way through the Grand Canyon, I think is what we're going to call this area, because it gets gnarly out here. So I'll come to a stop here, but it crawled its way up that very steep, very hard to get moving stair step situation. And that was all stall torque. That is getting the motor to spin from 0 to 1. And the Enduro drive units did, honestly, a very, very, very good job. So, whoa. One thing to always keep in mind is it's just the rear tires that have the parking brake on, and it's holding the Rivian just fine. There will actually be warnings if the car doesn't think it can hold itself. Coming up here, Alyssa, let's take a look as to what line we should go through here. You know what? I'm really feeling like we should go through the Grand Canyon, down through this way. What do you think, Alyssa? We got a thumbs up from her. So it doesn't seem too bad, but maybe we'll take a little bit harder line up this way, see if we can get a wheel up in the air. It just rained recently, so the ground could be a little mushy, but worst case, we'll pull it out with the Super Duty. So let's send it. Let's see how well this thing does for its first off-road experience. So into drive, the Rivian retains off-road and highest suspension. Very nice that it stayed in the all-terrain setting. Let's go up through this way, through the Grand Canyon here. So we'll start turning to the right. And we're just going to try and inch it gently through everything. The biggest thing with any kind of off-road driving, thumbs on the outside of the wheel, of course, especially when you can catch something like this, and just being extremely gentle, especially with a vehicle this heavy with huge undulations. I can feel the suspension really drooping, doing a great job of trying to keep all the tires on the ground. One pedal drive working well. Here we come teetering over. Feeling really nice. We've just hit this pretty steep embankment right there. We're going to see if it can pull us up. Oh my gosh, it's kind of like nothing for this, isn't it? Just amazing suspension travel and amazing driveline control at low speed. Rivian has done an amazing job at tuning this to feel so comfortable and so easy to maneuver. That was very impressive to get through there with not even lifting a wheel. That is just impressive from a chassis standpoint. Let's head on over this way. Again, I'd like to make sort of a repeatable loop back through here and maybe even make some bigger ruts. We're definitely going to need them. We can exit down that way, which will be kind of cool, but definitely want to explore what the heck is happening over this way as well. Well, you can see, guys, we bottomed out right over there, and no underbody protection, no problems. It's more for like if you're putting this thing, dropping it on boulders or whatever, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. The underbody of this thing is pretty strong. So yeah, we'll head down over this way. I do want to get a wheel up in the air and do some cross-car torque vectoring stuff. So I really thought we were going to get it here in the Grand Canyon area, but we'll find another obstacle, maybe over where like the track has the embankment to catch cars that come off. We'll try and get it so we can show some cross-car stuff through there. And of course, going downhill like this, super easy, just ride regen down. It's almost like having, you know, hill descent control of some kind, but you just kind of modulate the accelerator pedal and yeah, it just holds you back. It's really easy, really nice. Well guys, if you can see, there's a pretty big embankment, a dip here, which I'm hoping we can get a wheel up in the air with. One thing I'm doing is I'm actually keeping the Rivian in highest suspension, which will reduce the amount of wheel articulation we have because it keeps the airbags filled up. What I'm looking for here is not actually to get through the obstacle by way of mechanical grip, but I'm looking to get through by way of torque vectoring. So I actually do want to force a wheel and tire in the air. So I'm going to come on a pretty aggressive angle into this steep embankment here. We're going to crawl ourselves up, and what I'm going to hope to see is either the back right or the front left tire come up in the air. So can you see that there starting to spin? And what I'm looking to see is the response time from when I do a throttle tip in or an accelerator pedal. It's not a combustion car, but an accelerator pedal tip in to when it can get enough torque sent to the wheels, the front right and the back left that have traction on both sides. So this is requiring some pretty aggressive torque vectoring. You can see I'm completely teetering it right now, which is kind of fun. So we're up in the air on both sides, and the vehicle's remained very flat. You can see I've got this side tucked, probably looking pretty good, tucked up in the wheel well there, I would imagine. So I'm just going to lean into the accelerator pedal. I've got traction control fully on, and we're going to see what happens here as soon as I tip into it. So I'm in the throttle. I can see traction control blinking, and man, it does an amazing job of just, I can feel an ABS pulse, and then I can feel us get traction sent to the correct wheels and tires. So here I come back through the embankment. I can hear ABS pulsing again. So here we are. It's grabbing brakes and then sends us through perfectly. My goodness. Amazingly well-tuned cross-car torque vectoring. Again, even if I carry a little bit of momentum, I could hear it pulse the ABS, but it was fast enough where it didn't even throw traction control up on my screen there. And into reverse through here. Amazing job. It's just constant throttle input and it works its way through there. No issues at all. That is very impressive. I'd like to find an even steeper one to go through, and it might even be here. It gets a little bit more aggressive, kind of is what it looks like. I'll come through at a 45 angle, again trying to lift this wheel up in the air. So we're kind of teetering. Again, just leaning on the accelerator pedal. Perfectly pulls us straight up. Amazing cross-car torque vectoring. And again, if you do this with a tri or quad motor vehicle, the tri is going to have the same experience on the front axle. The rear will just, so here we are spinning. This is probably a little bit worse situation, and it took a good 2 to 3 seconds for it to figure out where to send the power in that case. If we did that with the quad motor vehicle, it would happen all through software controlling each individual motor. Here though, again, for most people, most obstacles, this is going to be just fine. Again, no rally mode, no drift mode, nothing like that. However, I feel like it was incredible off-road, so still perfectly acceptable to do some off-road stuff with, perfectly acceptable to throw some friends in here and do a quick, rip around the track just to show them what's up. And, from a base standpoint, again, I'm having just as much fun in this as I would maybe with the quad motor. The thing is, with the quad motor, you just accelerate a little bit harder. But I'm really happy with the standard R1S LFP option. However, we did burn quite a bit of juice. We're down to, we've burned about 20% out here, having some fun so far. You would do the same thing with the other models though too, because you just output more power, which means you drain that battery just as fast. With all that said, let's run back up to the building and I'll share some final thoughts on the driving experience of our new R1S. Well, there you guys have it. On road, on track, and off-road in our new R1S. Not really like a standardized test or anything, just going out and fooling around here. And I am so pleased with how this car drives. Yes, Scott's Rivian with the performance upgrade, same powertrain system, is a bit spicier on track. No, it has a bit more kick, a little bit more power on the rear axle, and you certainly do feel that. But do you need it? Not really. When you start pushing these vehicles to their limits, the drive modes make less and less of a difference, and you're just at the edge of what the tire can do. And my goodness, have we rounded off the edges right there of the tread blocks. And that's just what you get with a 7,000+ pound vehicle. I have to commend Rivian on still keeping a ton of off-road capability in the standard model. While we don't have the rock crawl modes or soft sand or anything like that, the regular all-terrain drive mode setting truly is a one-size-fits-all for off-road. I think it did a really nice job with torque split, with power management, with stall torque, with cross-car torque vectoring that, you know, you probably can go so much farther in this vehicle than almost anyone would ever bring their quad motor. And, you know, is it cool to have 4 motors? Yes. Would I want one? Yes. Do you need to spend $60,000 to $70,000 more for one? Not really. Now, there are other differences beyond just the driving. There's battery capacity, there's acceleration, you know, from just a 0 to 60 standpoint, and there's charging performance, all of which have a big impact. But I have to say, my charging experience with this battery has been amazing. It can get up from like 10 to 100% in 45 minutes or so, which really is way better than the NMC or NCA packs, the high nickel packs that Rivian uses that take forever to top charge. But they have done some work with charge curve tuning since the last time we've done a comparison. So we'll do a bunch of charge comparisons with this, which is why I'm glad I have it. But for a road trip, I drove this 800 miles or so back from Normal. I did feel like the range was just a little bit lacking. Like I wish it had another hit of range. Is it worth, you know, quite a bit of money for that? Maybe for some people. I could see the argument for it. However, you can full charge this every day, and for most people, you're just driving around town, and if you do go on a long road trip, you've got to charge anyway, so there the range doesn't actually matter. It's just how far you can go after it starts charging fast, and this has a great charging curve, considering it's the base model, and the LFP helps a ton. I always love to see the parking sensors when the car gets dirty because the ultrasonic waves makes the dust go away, which is always just a funny little side note here to the end of the video. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you think I made the right decision buying this instead of the quad motor. I still could see myself trading this in on the quad motor after a few months of testing. That's a real possibility, but I really think it was worth it to practice what I preach and buy the base model, because I keep saying it's all anyone needs, and I hope this video shows, at least for the driving dynamics, it's pretty much all anyone needs. Thanks so much for watching. See you on another one again soon. Bye-bye.